Hello and welcome to Geraumt, your podcast for information, design, and space. My name is Christian Lunger. I'm an experiential graphic designer, a service designer, and today I'm happy to have somebody to talk to who leads an organization which I think is one of the organizations who's really doing a lot for our community, for us experiential graphic designers. That's Cybelle Jones. She's the CEO of the Society of Experiential Graphic Design. Their headquarter is in the USA. And for those of you who don't know SCGD, just the short description would be that they exist to educate, to connect, and inspire our global community. They're situated in 35 countries with their members. And this is a sentence I really, really like, how they describe our own line of work to connect people to places. So, Sybil, thank you very much for your time. It's earlier where you are situated than where I am situated. So thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to talking to you. I'm looking forward to your explanation of the organization and of yourself, of SEGD and you as a person.
Thank you, Christian. I'm so happy to be on with you, and I enjoyed our little introduction before the beginning of the podcast. So, thanks for inviting me, and I've been really excited to have this conversation because these are all topics that I'm very passionate about. I can give a little bit about myself. I joined SCGD as CEO in May of 2020, so not very long ago, a little bit over a year, but I joined right in the midst of the pandemic. So it was a very strange time to start a new position. And it was also a big change for me because I had spent 30 plus years in a career as principal of an experience design firm. I was working as the principal lead for museum exhibition and digital design projects around the world.
Mhm.
And I had started my career in architecture, but I soon found that I really was passionate about people and storytelling, and I just couldn't make that connection in architecture. And when I found exhibition design, I just knew that I had found my home. And, I tend to be a very empathetic person. So having a job where I'm trying to tell people's stories and histories in a way that engages a broader audience was really where I, found my calling. But eventually, through the years, I also knew that design had a larger role and that possibly my goal of my career was to think about how design can solve bigger problems in the world.
Mhm.
And when this opportunity came up for the CEO position at SCGD, I really felt like that career shift from a for profit design firm to a nonprofit design organization was timely for me. And it was interesting being in the midst of COVID because when they hired me, they said, well, given that everything is up for all of this massive change and disruption, it's a good time to think about how we can take this organization to the next level. And there's a quote from Maya Angelou, who's a American author. You may know her, that I love, that really relates, I think, to experience design because she says people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Mhm.
And I feel like our organization at SCGD is that's what we do. We create spaces where people feel. We create this intersection of communication and place. Um, SCGD, just a little background, we're almost 50 years old. It was established in 1973. At that time, it was the Society for Environmental Graphic Design. Over the years, it evolved and grew to use the term experiential because that really envelops a much broader multidisciplinary society of which we are. Our members do a lot of different things, from graphic design to exhibition design to digital to branding. Um, we are now actually we're 40 countries, Christian. So we're
40
40
already?
countries.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. We've really been expanding even just since I joined. And we're a community of diverse thinkers, and we really support design thinking and doing. We're passionate about meaningful inspiration and engagement. And I think what we all have in common is that we share this love of design and design for the good of society, maybe.
hmm I think for me personally, for me, SCGD always was firstly a source of inspiration. So if I've come on your website, even early on when we just founded our company, um, you could see that this topic was taken very seriously in the US, and by that, by SCGD. So for me, it was always and still is a source of inspiration. And of course, lots of content for your own personal training. So there's, as a member, there's lots of videos you can use
Yeah.
that you're putting up there. So as I said, for me, you're one of the really good organizations for me as a member of this community. What
Christian,
all
can I give you a virtual hug across the podcast?
you can, I spread my arms now. I close them, so
Oh,
I
nice.
feel
Very
hugged.
nice.
So the what me it's nice that you actually explained how the change between the environmental graphic design and the experiential came, because at the time I never understood that, probably because my native language is German.
Right.
But I can follow the idea that it's more than just designing with a connection to the environment, and there is more in there. So choosing a word that broadens the perspective probably was quite a good choice. I'm not sure about how you well how you experience is that in our, at least in our language, in the German language, we always try to explain what we are doing by giving us a good job profession. And I always argument that being an experiential graphic designer is like the job profession that I use, although it's English, because it
Yeah.
encompasses most of what we are doing, and the philosophy uh, with which we are working, combining the design of spaces, connecting people to the spaces, doing the storytelling, combining it to places, because all other terminology that is available to us is very technical in German.
Yeah.
So thank you, America, for this terminology. I don't
Yeah.
know where it came from, but it really encompasses the whole profession quite well.
Yeah. And I think it encompasses that it's not one thing. We
Yes.
have lived in this world where we love to concretize things and create these silos. We say architecture, we say graphic, we say digital. But the reality is, when you're curating a space, it's like creating a film. It's a narrative that has ebbs and flows and highs and lows. And it requires, I mean, I say one thing always is that if I'm breathing, I'm collaborating. And as an experienced designer, you're collaborating. You can't do that job alone.
Mhm.
And so you need all those different perspectives and skill sets. And I think that's what makes experience design so wonderful.
Probably it's the same in the US and probably in other countries as well. What I experienced as, coming, many projects we do are wayfinding projects, and we still until this day, and it probably was one of the sources we found in the podcast as well, it was one of our goals to educate people around us on what can be achieved when you take this kind of topic very seriously. And this is, I don't know if it's easier in the US, if this kind of mindset that working together, graphic design, architecture, landscape design, can bring different kind of results than when working alone on this topic. Here in Austria, I think we have come a long way. It's getting much better, so that the um, that we are much more respected for the work that we do, not only for complex situations, but for simpler situations as well.
Yeah, you know, it has evolved over the course of my career. It has definitely evolved because I remember sitting on a plane and someone would say, "What do you do?" And I would say, "I design museums." And people would say, "I didn't know anyone did that." And I thought, well, who do they think? They would say, "Are you an interior designer?" And I would say, "No, I'm actually an experience designer." But now it has evolved. And it's interesting. I was talking to someone from Copenhagen, and they asked for my help. They said we really need communication methods, because they said, they're like, people aren't getting it and we have to really explain what we do. So I think it is evolving, but it has been slow coming. And part of that is this romance with the iconic individual designer, that somehow we think, the great architect, or, one person is the brilliant genius. And it's not really how most projects ever work anyway. And so when you think about experience design, it's applicable to everything. It's how we learn, it's how we work, it's how we connect to culture, it's how we share our time as a family. Humans are drawn, they love narratives and stories. And so I feel like our profession, part of the reason I took this role is because we're the profession of the future.
Mhm. Um, well, of course, I agree because we're both from the same field.
Don't bring an
But
architect
ap-
on this
apart
podcast.
apart from moving around in our own bubble, I still believe that that is true. Um, because I think the reason being that for me it's the saying that I mentioned at the beginning is connecting people to places. This is so strong because you can explain everything with that because we are living in spaces that I mean we're living on earth, and if you go down we're living in cities or in nature, or we're moving in nature. We're always within a space, and thinking about how we can improve people's life in spaces and how they connect to it,
Yeah.
specific how connect to their history, to their present, and maybe to their future even when interacting with a space. I mean, that's great work, to be honest. That's my passion as well. So I can fully sign the paper that you will send me that I'm passionate about this
Okay.
topic.
We'll be sending that over. No, it's true. And I also think, there's so many things that are really tough about our world right now. I mean, we've had a very rough time with the pandemic, and in the US with the racial injustice and politics, but I do feel like people need joy, and it's a survival. We have to feel joy in our life, and we have to feel hope, and we have to feel connected. And so the work that we are doing to create, whether you're going in for chemo treatment in a hospital, or you're
Mhm.
going to, dinner with your family, like, these are all opportunities to shift the perspective of that audience, of that person that is interacting in that space. And that's why I feel that it's so relevant and it's so timely, for us to bring experience design to the forefront.
That leads us seamlessly to the really heavy question that we agreed to talk about. I mean, it's no easy question, but at the same time, I mean, it's a dualism, let's say a Janus face. The question is, how can we as experiential graphic designers help to make the world a better place? It's loaded, I think, this
Yeah.
question. And there's so many topics we could talk about. In your mind, let's select just one and talk about the one where we can make the world a better place and see what kind of ideas come along, apart
Yeah.
from naming all of them,
No.
because there's so many things we could do better
Well,
or can make better.
I'm going to pick something that crosses all of, I think, those potential topics, which is our own design methodologies.
Hmm.
So I've been, my job now is I'm just talking to great designers. Every day I'm trying to reach out and to meet new people and to understand what they're doing and how their world and their role has changed. And I want the listeners to this podcast that are designers or that are in the realm of this area of practice to understand that we have a lot of power. We have, and not power in a negative way, we have a lot of ability to shift perspectives in our role. And so, if we think about our design methodologies and the ways in which we interact with our clients, I think that's where we can really start the change making.
Hmm.
So it's not subject based, it's really process based. And so I've been talking to a lot of designers that are saying, number one, they are vetting their clients. And if their clients' ethics or goals don't align with their personal, and their team's feelings, um, even as hard as it is in this economy, they would rather not do the work. But they're also opening the clients to these conversations about what they need to do in the process. So,
Hmm.
in my whole career, design is rush, 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 right? We're deadlines, it's always a crash course on how we can get something done and not enough time and not enough money. But I think it's a good time for us to pause and say, is that really the right methodology? We like to take complex solutions and make them simpler. But maybe now we need to allow a bit of chaos. We need to bring different voices to the table to have opinions that may not align potentially with our opinions. And maybe the messiness of the design process needs to be shared with the clients. We love to have these polished, finished solutions. But in reality, to really have the best solution for that design problem, I think we need to open up the conversation more, and we need to have sometimes tougher dialogue. So if we're doing a project that may have been historically told from one particular perspective of history,
Hmm.
we need to bring different voices in. Now, that's painful sometimes and it's contentious and there's tensions, but allowing that, I think produces a different outcome that everyone can be better for, if that makes sense.
Yes, it resonates heavily with me for two reasons. Firstly, I'm a service designer, so I go by service design principles. Um, that means the whole profession, to look at it from let's say from different perspectives. This is like interwoven with this kind of approach. And second, I'm systemically trained. So looking at how people do things rather than what they
Mhm.
do is a perspective that I take in my kind of job very heavily as well. And I know that you can make a difference. So if we bring it back to how can we make the world a better place, I heard two things. First is by by um, by applying a professional design process. It could even come as far as changing the project itself so that it
Yeah.
does more good than bad, for
Yeah.
example. Say building a place in a city or creating a specific building that then is again is a work or living place for people. So the process can influence that and make the client rethink certain aspects as well. So the second thing that resonated with me was that you could actually let's switch to the museum design, that you can bring an expertise on the table that changes the whole outcome, regarding on what you show, like as you said looking at a specific topic with different points of views, not just one point of view. um, so I think that could make everything better understanding for all the
Yeah.
people involved.
Well, and it's not even, we could take it even other than a museum. If you're creating a spatial, destination,
Hmm.
you're creating placemaking. I think oftentimes we think monolithically about who that audience is. And so some people feel naturally welcome there, while other people don't feel welcome there. And we need to really question, who determines the aesthetics that are good design. This is a very exciting, provocative time in our world for us because what we think is pretty or what we think is attractive or what we think is comfortable is different based on where you're from and how old you are and what your
Hmm.
cultural background and what your, and ethnicities and income and education. And so we're really opening up this platform to understand really when we design, are we designing for everyone? And are we doing our very best in this context of where this project is? And I will also say that people and consumers, I have three daughters, they want authentic. They can look anything up. And if they sniff out that you are inauthentic or that you were not thinking about the environmental impact of something, they just won't support you. And so they're kind of holding us, you know,
I have
they're
just one
holding us
daughter, but I know what
accountable.
you're talking about.
Right, right. You know, they don't take bullshit. They really don't. And I think that's good. You know, they're challenging us to be like, hey, you know, who did you design this for? And how much did it cost? And was it really like, could you have spent that money in a different way? Like everything has an ethical question.
Yes, I mean, talking about ethics is another heavy question. Probably for another podcast, just to talk about ethics in design.
Yeah,
I found, I think I will put one of them. I found so many, but I found a couple of good resources regarding ethics in design. One I will put in the show notes as well,
great.
which I found really inspiring for me as well. I've seen on the podcast that you made for SCGD, you had this topic as well. You had once this African American artist who had like put out a statement of how design could actually react to the present situation. That quite impressed me as well to find something like that on a
Yeah.
design organization's website.
I'm
So
so glad you saw that. You know what? We should put the link. Will you put I'll share the link and you can put that as well.
yes.
But you know, that was because when I came to SCGD, actually it was before I came. I'm looking at all the problems that we're facing in our society and I'm saying, where's our manifesto? You know, in the 1920s and the 30s and the 40s when the world was at war, we saw architects and artists and authors come together and say, enough. We are making change. And out of that, we got the Bauhaus, we had the Harlem Renaissance, we had
Mhm.
all of this amazing. And I'm looking around saying, where, where is that for us, for our generation? And my friend, uh, who we commissioned to do the spoken word piece, he said, Cybelle, maybe you just need to do your own manifesto. Maybe there's not one there for you. And so we worked with him and created this and put it out there. And so far, it really resonates with people. It's just this call to action. And I feel that's kind of, part of where I see my role. But I will also say, Christian, so many people I talk to, they feel it and they're doing it. And it's just more bringing those voices together to have the magnification of the impact. I was fortunate enough to speak with Bruce Mao. We had the virtual South by Southwest, and he
Mhm.
has an amazing, if people haven't read it, his manifesto. But he says the reality is that massive change happens incremental, sedimentary rock, and lots of ideas. But we change slowly. Slowly, we change everything. And I think that's true. I think we have to realize that when we look at these moments in history when there was monumental change, it was because something was triggering us to realize that this was the moment that this had to happen.
Personally, I have the same feeling. So when you talked about it, basically I felt that it's not a rational thing. I think too that there is something going on. I feel like a change coming, and I feel like as a not only as a person but as an organization, not company as a kind of organization, I think we have to react to that. I'm not sure if we're too early, too late. I just have the feeling something has to be done, something has to change. Uh, and well, watching news, having the pandemic, well, I don't know
Yeah.
if we're at the end, in the middle, or at the beginning of the pandemic, but things are getting to move. That's what I personally think. That was one of the reasons I put up this this loaded question of how can we make the world a better place, because I think that's why I like the manifesto as well. I think there is something that gives you a goal for the future.
Yeah.
Um, and to make decisions by the end of the day based on ethics as well. They're maybe not always clean, but clean ethics means like black and white. Uh, but still, having good ethics for the future probably is a good solution for you as an organization.
I think ethics goes hand in hand with empathy. And I've been spending, I know one of your questions was like, what am I reading? But I spend a lot of time reading nonfiction,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to understand all the things I don't understand about the world. You know, being a museum designer for so many years, the one thing I realized is that there's not one story of history. You know, you were taught one way, and then you meet someone who's an expert in another field, and you go, oh my God, I thought I grew up thinking this my whole life, but there's, so many different layers to this narrative.
Hmm.
And so I think we have to do both. We have to have empathy, and that's probably the foremost important role. We have to listen to those that we are trying to communicate their design. Really listen, not just kind of come in like we're the expert and we have the design solution because we did something else that was successful. Like, use every moment, every day as a clean slate to see the world through new eyes.
Well, and see yourself as one of the team, not
Yeah.
as the expert. I think that kind of mindset is quite important as well.
Yeah, we had some interesting discussions about who should be at the table. We have one of our members is in Philadelphia, and they bring a gentleman who's a psychologist. They do a lot of wayfinding for hospitals, and you think about people's anxiety, and there's so much subliminally that happens in space, that subtle design, whether it's a gentleman I know, he's a audio designer, and he was doing a project for a children's hospital, and he said, you would think these kids were undergoing chemo, and he said you would think that they want like calm music, and he said no, they give them playstations and they have very active music because it gives them intensity, that they're focused on something, not
Hmm.
on kind of the state of where they are medically, but able to just be kids. So I there's great people out there. That's what I love about SCGD, is that you meet these people
Hmm.
and you go, "Oh my God, I didn't know anyone did that." Or, "That's the most fabulous project." And our community is welcoming. You could almost email anybody and say, "Hey, can I have a conversation with you? Do you want to partner with me on this project?" They're very open and welcoming. I've never seen another organization like that, that I've ever been a part of.
Hmm. We
Like
have,
you, Christian.
like, I am open, or I'm an organization.
like you're open. And
Thank
we
you.
and we made a connection. We didn't know each other before the podcast.
Yes, I'm almost not so happy to have to finish the podcast, the official one now, because we're approaching the 30 minutes, and there is another 30 minutes of talk in me
I
with you,
know.
listening and
Yeah.
talking. But I have to ask the question on what made you laugh full-heartedly lately. Uh, well,
You know,
20
because I
20
was
minutes ago we had,
20 minutes ago we were talking about
but
um
choose your own example.
okay. Well, my I have 3 daughters and a husband, and being the boss all day, they love to tease me about trying to be the boss at home. So, it's always good to have people that are able to ground you and to just call you out on I'm very loud. I have a loud laugh. Yeah, my family's like, Mom, you just, when we were in the pandemic, they had to move me to the complete other side of the house because they were like, we can't work. We just hear you everywhere. You're laughing, you're talking. So, I think being able to laugh at yourself makes me laugh.
Excellent. And the book tip, the reading tip. You already mentioned quite an interesting one. I hope you can send me the link where we
I
can find
will.
the
I
people will
will.
never forget how you make them feel.
Yeah.
Any other reading tip that is special to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have I have so many, but there's a great book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. If you're a leader, it just shows the importance of honesty. And I think we try to be polite, and sometimes it doesn't get us that end goal that we need to. have as leaders.
Hmm.
Also about like listening and being honest and taking criticism. Like I was saying, I take criticism from my family, whether I like it or not. The other book that is fantastic, it's an old book, but everyone, has read it at some point in their life, and it's called The Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron. And if you feel like you need to recharge your creative juices, it's a week by week guidance of different techniques that you can use. I think it has a tint of a religious slant to it, but you just have to,
Okay.
like put that aside if you're not religious, but just take it because it really helps you. For example, she says every week you need to take an artist date with yourself.
Hmm.
And it sounds so simple, but we just don't do that. To take the time to go somewhere and just be about what that feeling and creativity is, because these things work their way, you know, in the subconscious that then I think allows you to do more creative and meaningful work. So that's a lot of what I do. I try to meditate every day. I try to allow myself to be present. And in doing that, I believe that, we do better work. We have better human connections.
Excellent. It would be great if you could send me the links
Sure.
of
Absolutely.
these
Yeah.
three books plus the manifesto from the South by
Yes.
Southwest.
Yes.
I will
Yes.
put the link in from that one as well, plus your own, so that I can put it in the show notes. Um,
Wonderful.
that really brings me to the end. So, as always, if you have any recommendations, tips,
Yeah. I don't
get
want
in
to say
contact.
goodbye. We'll have to
You,
do another one.
we have to do another one, and I'll let you say goodbye.
Okay. Thank you
You
so
will have
much,
the final
Christian.
word, Sybil,
Oh,
because I just want to mention the email address that the people can connect to us. It's the podcast at geraumt.com, where they can send everything. And I really want to say thank you. I think it totally actually we talked 3/4 of an hour. I
oh
think
my
12 of the
goodness.
50 minutes we prepared, we just laughed. At
We
least this
did.
is my how I remember it. It was really great talking
Uh,
to you. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Christian. It was wonderful. And I think this is such an important narrative to put out there. And I hope that everyone will realize that being an experienced designer is the best possible profession. So come check us out, ask Christian, or come see what we're doing at SCGD.org. And as
Yes.
you said, we have so many phenomenal resources there for free. Even if you're not a member, there's a lot of great content. Our Global Design Awards are really a great resource. So thank you.